and welcome to Senora Tommy's Biblioteca on YouTube. If you haven't already, you should be subscribed and you should smack the bell so that you can receive notifications and never miss a video. So today is Chapter Book Tuesday, and I'm actually really excited to recommend this chapter book for today. It was a book that I read a couple of months ago, and I realized that it was one that I really should recommend because it's so good. So this book is called Mascot, and it is actually inside the Sunset Library. I was in the library last week, and I happened to notice that it was in our chapter book section, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a great book. I need to make sure that I recommend it. So Mascot is the name of our book, and it is by, author, I think I pronounced his name Antony. So it's Antony John, and I'm going to read the back to you a little bit. It says, actually, I'm not going to read the back to you. I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book. So an excerpt is like a section from it. So here we go. Okay. So it's actually chapter 2. This book is not, it is around a little over 300 pages. So it's a pretty good read. So if you sat down, it would take you probably a little bit to read it. So I'm going to read you chapter 2 so that you get an idea of a little bit about what our character is about. Because certainly when you look at the title or the cover of the book, I see some things here that are kind of interesting. I see the St. Louis, Missouri Arch. I see a cardinal and a baseball, and I see a wheelchair. So I think, what is going on? Okay, chapter 2. It says, after homeroom, Reuben follows me to math. And I do mean follow. If we were side by side, we'd take up the entire hallway. He has a hard time keeping up, and I could probably leave him behind, but I don't want to be a jerk. So I ease off the throttle. And by throttle, I mean my arms. My upper body works well, but the lower half, let's just say that my wheelchair and I are pretty much inseparable. It could be worse, I guess. My chair is a good one. Super lightweight aluminum with adjustable tension upholstery and high pressure tires. If it were a car, it'd be a Corvette. But if it were a Corvette, I'd have an engine, and then people would hear me coming and move out of my way. Instead of what actually happens, which is that no one hears me coming at all. And even when I accidentally ram behind people from behind, I can't seem to make them budge. It wasn't like this. On the first day of middle school last year, I walked into the building on my own 2 legs. I was even the starting catcher for one of the best little league teams in St. Louis. So I love it already because you can tell that he is kind of funny, right? And you know that he is in middle school, which is one of my favorite times of sort of areas that authors will focus on. I love books that center around middle school. If you remember last week's recommendation, Wink was also set in middle school. I love middle school books. So, and he's in a wheelchair. So you're like, we already know quite a bit about him. So then he says, then came the car accident. That was in April. By the time I woke up in St. Louis Children's Hospital, my legs and brain weren't on talking terms anymore, and my internal organs had been rearranged. I spent the next 2 months as a guest at the 12th floor neuro rehab center, along with 6 other kids whose luck were just as good as mine. It was almost July when I finally went home. A counselor told Mom it was important for me to establish routines, but all my old routines involved 2 parents. That first night, I heard Mom crying in her bedroom. See, Dad was in the car with me the day we crashed. He didn't even make it to the hospital, though. Turns out you don't need to be a doctor to pronounce someone dead on the hard shoulder of an interstate highway. So in chapter 2, we have already been introduced to what sounds like is going to be a very interesting story about a middle schooler that gets into a car accident, loses the ability for his legs, and unfortunately during that accident his dad ends up dying. And so just like the book last week, Wink, this is one of those characters that you're going to be rooting for the entire time. He has to figure out what life is going to be like for him now that he is in a wheelchair. And that has been a very difficult thing for him to navigate, especially considering that he was such a good athlete a couple of months prior. And so at the end of the book, you are going to find yourself really rooting for Noah, who is I don't know if I mentioned it, but Noah is the name of the main character in the book. And you're really going to be rooting for him and wanting to see what happens and where his story goes. So I definitely recommend Mascot, Antony John. Wonderful book. You won't be disappointed. Check it out.